Now we're going to go to the notes that you have. They're pink. It's a pink handout. This section is all about writing proofs while solving equations. So like I said in the first video, you know how to solve equations. Now we're going to write reasons for each step. And this is what a typical proof looks like. You write your mathematical statements on one side, your reasons on the other side. Now your first equation is always going to be what you're starting with. And for that reason, we always write given, because that's where we're starting. That's the information that we're given. If I was going to solve this equation, I might do it differently than you would. I might have a different first step than you would. But we should ultimately end up with the same answer mathematically. Our steps might look a little bit different. So if I was solving this, the first thing I would do is add x to both sides. So I would have 3x plus 3 equals 9. I added a number to both sides, so my reason is by the addition property. The next thing I would do is subtract 3 from both sides. So I would get 3x equals 6. And because I subtracted from both sides, it would be the subtraction property. Lastly, I could divide both sides by 3 and get x equals 2. And that would be the division property. I already have numbers laid out on these slides, but if you use less than 5 steps or 6 steps, it doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. It's just if we did it another way, we might have an extra step. So once you get your answer, you have a reason for each step, you are finished. So really the only new thing is writing your reasons for each of your steps. If we go to the next example, you can see from the beginning, I have my given equation, so your first step is always given, and I need to distribute first. So I get negative 24x minus 8 equals 64, and that is by the distributive property. I'm okay with you putting PROP for property instead of writing it out every time, but I do want you to at least write out distributive, addition, subtraction, things like that. The next thing I would do is add 8, get negative 24x equals 72, and that's the addition property. Because I added a number to both sides. And lastly, I'll divide by negative 24. And I get x equals negative 3. And that is by the division property. And that's it. The last two examples are a little bit harder. They just have a few more steps, but it's nothing too complicated. Even if you're someone that would rather go through and solve the equation first, again, keeping your steps very nice and organized so you can see what you're doing, and write your reason second, that's okay. So I'm starting out with my given. I need to distribute twice. Now, some of you might be thinking, do I need to write distributive property twice? And you do not need to. If you do both of them in one step, you can write it once. If you take step 2 and you only distribute the first one, and then you take step 3 and then distribute the second one, then you may write it twice, but you don't have to. So if you did it like I did, you only need to write distributive property once because you only used it in one step. Next, I would add 4x and get 10x minus 10 equals negative 20. And that's the addition property. Then I would add 10 to both sides and get 10x equals negative 10. And that is also the addition property. And lastly, I would divide both sides by 10 and get that x is negative 1. I divided both sides by a number, so that's the division property. Now the very last example is one that you might struggle with solving wise because it's probably been a little while since you really solved a difficult equation. If you don't struggle with it, that's great too. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the steps, and there will be some like this on your practice worksheet. So if you get stuck, you can refer to how we did this one, or just give it your best shot and we can go over it on Friday when I get back. So my given is always first. This is the equation they give me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute my -3 into the parentheses. Remember, when you multiply a number times a fraction, it only goes to the numerator. You only multiply it by the numerator. So I'm going to have b equals -18 over a plus 4. And that's the distributive property. Now, my a is stuck in the bottom, so I need to get that out of there. So the way you do that, if you think, how do you get rid of a divided by a plus 4? You have to multiply by a plus 4 on both sides. So I need to multiply b times a plus 4. And I'm left with -18 on this side. I multiplied by a number on both sides, so that's the multiplication property. Now I'm working to get a by itself, so I need to get rid of this b. It's weird because we're moving around variables and not just whole numbers, but you treat it just like you would a number. How do you get rid of a times b? You divide by b. So now it looks like a plus 4 equals -18 over b. And that was the division property. Lastly, I need to get a completely by itself by subtracting 4 from both sides. Now, what a lot of you might want to do is take -18 minus 4 all over b. But you have to think, this is just one number now. -18 over b is a number in itself. So we're just taking that whole number and subtracting 4. So your answer should look like -18 over b minus 4. And that is by the subtraction property. Now, if you ended up with the same answer, and maybe it looked a little bit different just because of the formatting, because you took different steps, that's not necessarily telling you you're wrong. You can always solve, especially a complicated equation like this, you might have taken some different steps, and that's okay. So if you're not sure, just go ahead and do what you think, and again, we can just go over it on Friday if you have more questions. Now, what you need to do is, your practice answers are going to go on here, okay, on the pink handout that's attached to your notes. This white worksheet is where you will get your problems. So for number 1 on the white worksheet, you write your answer in number 1 on the pink worksheet. Just because I don't think you really have enough room here, and I want your work to be really nice, organized, and detailed, okay? So as you go through, I typed the first 2 in for you, but what you need to do from then on is write the equation and write given. I want your steps numbered, and I want you not to skip any steps. When you get to the back, I didn't draw the line for you like I did on the front. I didn't write any numbers for you like I did on the front, because I want you to get used to formatting this yourself. So I still expect you to write your equation, write given, and have your line down the middle, keeping your math separate from your reasons. So your homework is to finish 1 to 12, the entire white worksheet. And if there are any you're stuck on or you don't know how to solve, just circle them, do the work you can, and then we'll go over it on Friday.